Okay.
Perfect. Yes, thanks so much for the invitation, Edward, and to all the others, and for taking the time to talk about the outcomes of our report, and for the very nice introduction. Yes, it's 10 years with Terre des Hommes this year, quite a while, and 6 years before with Kindernote for KNH. Yes, we started Time to Talk in 2015, so also 10 years ago. And we're currently submitting the next project proposal to continue with Dialogue Works. So hopefully from November onwards, we can go ahead with the new project. But that's a different story. Today, I will focus on the child labor report that we launched last year. And it's a bit unusual in many, many regards. And this is why I'm quite happy to talk to all of you who are the real experts on child labor about the findings that we gathered last year. First of all, I think the idea that we would love to do some research with the limited funds that we have in Germany was born quite a while ago. I think we set up the first terms of reference in 2019 already. But then other ideas came in, we didn't have funding and so on. And then my colleague Barbara retired last year. And our decision was to go ahead with this report before she starts her retirement. So it was literally the last chance to do a collaborative report with her last year. And this is the outcome. Um, the idea was really driven by just an interest. Like we do research on child labor in so many regards across the globe, but never just right in front of our door. So we were really curious to see what children in Germany say, in also in comparison to children from other countries. And if we can find children working in their day-to-day life to great extent or little extent or whatsoever, in what types of work they are involved and so on. So it was just out of curiosity. And then in the end, also driven by the fact that the German ministry applied to become a pathfinder in Alliance 8.7. But when you look at the roadmap of the German government, you don't find a lot of details on the situation in Germany. So we just wanted to support this application and complement existing information by doing our small research. So we decided to go for an analysis of children's activities specifically in the family environment. So that is activities that are not illegal per se. That was the niche topic that we focused on, and we left all other aspects out. So our report is not a fully fleshed analysis of child labor in Germany. As you can imagine, we had to focus due to limited resources. And our idea was to focus really on the family environment because we see so many children working in the family environment across the globe. And we were just curious to see if that's happening in Germany as well. So we had some guiding research questions. First of all, do we find child work or labor in this context or regard? And are these isolated cases? At this point, I need to explain that Terre des Hommes makes a distinction between child work and child labor, knowing about the entire complexity around the definitions out there. But we as NGO need to find a practical way to name what we see. So for our practical work in the field, it turned out to be of use if we distinguish between child work, that is non-harmful work, that allows for schooling, that doesn't harm the child's development, but that comes with a lot of benefits for the individual child in terms of skills, training, and self-esteem, cultural values, and so on. And we try to distinguish this from labor, which is very similar to ILO Convention 182 on the worst forms of child labor. So literally the form of work or labor that children do that doesn't allow for schooling in parallel and that potentially harms children's physical or psychological development. I know about the criticism of these binary categories and the overall difficulty to find adequate definitions, but we need to find a practical way that allows us to continue working in the field. And this is why, in the end, we use this terminology with the shortcomings it has. We also wanted to hear what children think about their work and if relevant authorities in Germany are aware of the risks and signs, if the current legislation that we have is sufficient, if there are control mechanisms, if there are any activities or employment relationships that have hardly been addressed so far, or are not even covered by legislation or not seen by supervisory authorities, and if we find a need for action or if everything is fine. So that was really just the starting set of research questions. So what did we do? In the end, we, of course, did an evaluation and research of existing studies, a desk review of the literature that we could find, but also practical information from the youth welfare system, counseling centers, and so on, an analysis of legal provisions. We did a survey with the 16 state governments on questions of children's work. We did background interviews with psychologists and doctors, educators, and people like teachers who are in direct contact with the children. We also did an observation of the channels of 5 family influences, because when we started our research, it became quite obvious that family influencing is a new and very influential sector, which should be analyzed or at least explored under the perspective of children's work and labor. And we invited children to do a group discussion with us. The selection criteria for children were that they are working in parallel to schooling. So we got in touch with schools that are supporting our work, that we know from any professional or private background, and that we thought could be interested to support us by organizing a group discussion. And 4 groups volunteered, and the teachers pre-selected children in a group. They were aged 12 to 16 years, and they only chose or invited children of whom they know that they work. And then we discussed the draft text with 7 experts from different fields in a peer review, and including state authorities, and continued with the finalization of the text. So first of all, what do children and youth say? That was quite interesting and astonishing in my eyes. Like, we consulted 37 children altogether, and 14 of them reported activities that violate existing German laws, and 5 of them performed activities that potentially violate German laws. As you know the ILO framework. So the German Youth Employment Protection Act is the national law that implements ILO Convention, particularly 138. It also includes the same minimum age lines, and also a list of activities that children can perform or should not perform. And the tools that we used were the timeline activity, a day in the life of, in which what you see here in the first picture, in which children just draw on paper their daily routine to give us a glimpse of how much hours they spend at school, how much time they spend at work, and to see if they have time for leisure and play. Then we did the why exercise to understand why they work. And when they give a reason, we continue asking why until you come really back to the very root causes. And we did the flower of support exercise, in which children are asked to identify stakeholder groups that have influence on their work conditions, and to voice recommendations for these groups. So all in all, the German statistics report about 60 cases of violations against the German Youth Employment Protection Act altogether in Germany. So out of 14 million children in Germany, 60 cases are reported. And we found 14 with a very, very low number of children involved in our group discussions, which is quite interesting, because I would love to do a large scale analysis of this in Germany to see how many children really work and what they do, and if they like it, and what kind of benefits they see, and so on. But this is not existing. So activities carried out by the children were quite diverse. Many of them are involved in catering, in retail factory work, in housework. Looking after siblings was mentioned quite often, but also delivering newspapers or helping out on the farms and care work. And I think the two, mm, let's say, two interesting examples are a 14-year-old boy who works really as a security guard and doing night shifts every Friday from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. for 50 euros per shift, together with his father, and he spends his holidays working in other European countries in addition. That was quite interesting because he's very young to do such an activity in Germany. Also, the 12-year-old boy involved in farm work, he works almost full time every weekend and every holiday from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., watering cows, pushing feed, helping with the harvest, and using heavy machinery and so on. So I was quite surprised to find these cases working so many hours in risky areas in Germany with just asking 37 children. All of them were quite proud, as the same. I think the answers that we found on do you like your work or what you don't like about your work are very similar to what you know from international contexts. Every child, except for those involved in caring, for those young carers that I will do a spotlight on later, um, all the others mentioned very positive aspects of their work, earning money, learning skills, preparing for a professional work afterwards, spending time with family members with whom they work, and um, also growing in self-esteem and knowledge. So that was very similar to what we find when we do research internationally. What was a bit striking in Germany is that we found children working across all social contexts. So from areas of Germany which could be considered poor areas to very rich families that have their own family-run companies. We found more children working in family-run companies, even with high income levels, compared to children from low income levels. So that was quite interesting. One could expect that you find children working more in low income families in Germany, but that's not the case, at least for our very limited sample of 37 children. We also asked children for recommendations, as I said, and there were some interesting recommendations that I can share. We'll not go through every detail here, but maybe we also find some time to discuss this later. Particularly for teachers and social workers, these children had very specific recommendations, like, for instance, taking into account the burden that students have. This was mentioned by a girl who is involved in factory work, so that they should do a better dosing of homework and not give children a lot of homework to do on Tuesdays and nothing to do on Thursdays, but better find a balance throughout the week. They also said they want more social workers at school whom they can talk to in case of family struggles and concerns, or if they want to discuss opportunities that they have to make a choice. They also said they need shorter school days to have more time to work. So, and they would like to have more technical support at school so they can be quicker in doing their homework and get rid of it to be able to work a bit earlier. And those who work in restaurants in the evenings, for instance, asked for a later school start in the mornings to be able to sleep more hours before they go to school. They also had the idea for the city center to do a better public transport system because many of them miss the bus when they are tired in the morning. So they wanted a higher interval of more buses so they don't come late to school when they miss the first bus. More financial support for disadvantaged students, or keeping school opportunities intact as a balance to work. Also, they were quite, some of them, I think this was mentioned by two children, they asked the political stakeholders to increase child benefits so that it's not necessary to work. The great majority, except for young carers, was, on the other hand, very happy to be able to combine school and work. And they also asked for fighting inflation, so that they don't need to work so much to earn money to compensate a low income, for instance. Similar to what I know from children in other countries, they also asked for more appreciation of their work from employers. Two of them mentioned that they are not paid regularly, so they really want to be paid for work that they do. They don't want to do work that is dirty, and they ask for more technical support and guidance to be really instructed to improve their skills when they do the work. In one area in which I consulted children, youth gangs, violent and criminal youth gangs were a problem and forced children to pay money to avoid violence. So they asked the police to be more, show more presence and to stop these criminal youth gangs to avoid violence against children. So many of them have to pay a fee to be left out from violent gang meetings in the evenings. That seemed to be quite a problem in that specific area, but 1 out of 4. Yes, and I mentioned the city already. So that was the spotlight on the focus group discussions with the children. I could continue with more examples and more information, but maybe I focus on the 2 other areas that we took in the spot, and we can do this in the section for discussion and question and answers. We did a separate chapter on young carers because when we did a desk review, we came across children who are quite involved in caring for for relatives with chronic diseases or who had an accident and are now at home. The overall care system in Germany is very much under pressure because it lacks funding and it lacks also the capacity to really care for all people in need. So it's a very a sector which is very under struggle, and children seem to compensate what is not delivered by state institutions. So across the German Republic, it seems that almost 480,000 children care for sick relatives on a day-to-day basis. And this is linked to severe consequences. And it matches also that we found 3 children in our focus group discussions that are involved doing this. These are the only 3 children that didn't mention any positive aspect of their work, except for they feel good for being able to help their families in a very needy situation. But these were really 3 examples that voiced very much how much they suffer from the overall work that they do. So they feel a great responsibility. Many of them, like the 3 that I interviewed, they all leave school early to be home and care for their adults. They don't meet friends or only to a very limited extent because they have to be at home to keep an eye on the sick relative while the parents go to work. They feel a lot of mental strain, anxiety, and depressive moods because probably this very specific role in which they are is linked to a very deep fear that relatives might die. So I spoke to one child whose father had a heart transplantation, and she was really, really in a day-to-day fear that her father could die. So it was a very difficult situation for her. And due to the very limited time that these 3 children and also the overall group of young carers seems to complain is a low level of social integration because they don't have much time to spend with their friends and little access to help. So this was linked to a set of recommendations that we submitted also to the ministry because the overall caring system in Germany is not taking any notice of children who do care work at home. So I have one quote from the child that I interviewed, and she was really like, I mean, we know each other quite a while, and you know what kind of work Tardesam does on child work and labor. We always explore positive and negative aspects, but I was quite surprised how much stress this child was expressing with regard to care work. So I put her in with a quote, because she does not only care for her father every day since she is 12, but also she works part-time at a veterinary practice, and that was quite a lot for her in my eyes, or at least this was what she said. So the question is that child work or labor? We could probably continue this debate for ages. It's definitely not possible to classify these activities under the German Youth Employment Protection Act. There's also no case law, no administrative practice, and the situation is not really tackled in the German literature that we can find. Internationally, you find a bit more, but not really in Germany. So on the other hand, is the situation of these children is not taking place in a legal vacuum. So there are general provisions, of course, of criminal family and youth welfare system that apply here. And definitely after talking to these, particularly to these three cases in our group discussions, it seems that they have quite a burden in their daily life, and that at least an access to support systems should be established on behalf of the German government. This was at least our impression after talking to these children. Another very different chapter of our report focuses on the monetization of children, so family influencers. Here again, we had to focus, so we included only channels of family influencers and not of kid influencers. So of course, children decide on their own to set up a channel and to share videos and so on, and to earn money through this. But this is a self-made decision, and we wanted to explore more what happens to children that didn't decide on their own, but that are involved in family, in the channels of family influencers. So we don't cover kid influencers in our chapter. Unfortunately, we had no child in our focus group discussion. I spoke to one child that was attending one of the schools that I visited, but she was not willing to be in a focus group discussion. So we can only present what the desk review delivered. And we did an observation of 5 family influencer channels over a period of 4 weeks to just understand how it works. It's quite an impressive market. So influencer marketing has really grown into $1 billion business. And the clear statement is that those with a wide reach of millions of followers, they generate thousands of likes and really a lot of money through this. And it works best when children are young. So the focus in these channels is really on children younger than 3 years old. So children that have no chance to say yes or no to what they do, because it's very difficult for them to understand what's happening. And we also found on these channels that the privacy rights, data protection rights, etc., are quite violated, because children are seen naked at the toilet, when they cry, when they sleep, when they are sick. So in every single private moment that you can imagine, that probably none of us wants to be seen online, we found these children with a lot of money being generated for the families. And we found this quite critical because particularly the very young children, so those up to 3 years, they are seen in a daily routine, and it's quite a considerable time commitment that they are asked for. So video production takes a while. If you see videos that last like 20 minutes, you can probably calculate like 2 to 3 hours for production. And the experts we spoke to see massive risks, particularly for these very young children, because they see a risk of attachment and relationship disorders. This damages their development because they really grow up in front of cameras, and threats to their safety, of course, because just by Googling, I found the private homes of the family influencers. So when I like the child, I could just go there and knock on the door, and I can easily find the schools they attend and so on. So Again, the question is that child work or labor, very difficult to answer because, of course, also when we spoke to the federal governments in Germany, they told us maybe it's more a new trend in communication. Maybe it's just a product of digitalization. Maybe it's just normal to film the daily routine of a family. But when we spoke to international legal experts on that, they confirmed that in many regards, and I would be very interested to hear from you how this is seen, how you see this, how this is seen in your countries. But they told us that internationally it can be described as economic exploitation within the meaning of Article 32. And depending on the individual case, C 182 could be met. Of course, it's not easy to say that in general, but in the end, we had the feeling that particularly for the age group 0 to 3, we need some harsh regulations in Germany to avoid that these children are to be seen in very private moments online. And we have entered into debates with the ministries in charge in Germany. We had some roundtables already, and it seems quite promising that we can increase protection here. Unfortunately, I cannot present how children think about this. This would also be very interesting to research. The older the children grow, probably they would also voice positive aspects of being online. For the younger children, it's probably very difficult to even judge about uh, what they are doing because it's for a 2-year-old child is probably not possible to say that they support being on a family influencer channel. Yes, but I would really love to hear from you what you think about this and if there is any research planned globally and so on. But for now, I stop because we also want to have some time for discussion, and I'm also quite interested to hear your feedback. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Antje. I will stop the recording.